Viva Los Angelitos! Fernando, the Lone Star Halo. Todd, the Foxy Man. Okay, I was expecting more of a reaction from that. We are here today to talk a little bit about spring training and a lot of bit about Todd wanting to get rid of the MLB All-Star game. He wants to cut it. It's over. Hit the music.
Hey, you are now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast, sponsored in part by Noble L Works over on 1621 South Sinclair, where you can get discounts by just mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield, drink discounts on us, baby. And also by 714 Tickets, 714 Tickets, 714 Tickets. The price you see is the price you get, and you also get 10% additionally off in the Apply Now code once you order your tickets just by mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show.
In the land of last shores, I play my part with the halos in the infield. I'll make my mark. I'm the Lone Star Halo, shining bright tonight. In a sea of rangers, I'll stand and fight with the halos in the outfield under stadium lights. From Texas to Anaheim, we'll soar to new heights. We'll soar to new heights.
Hey, welcome into another episode of the Halos in the Infield daily podcast. I'm your host, one of the hosts, Toddfox, and the star of the show, the Lone Star Halo himself.
This guy just casually dropped my ex-girlfriend's name.
I wasn't trying to. For some reason, I was like focusing on everything flashing in front of me, and then I put Heedy and Daly together, and it came out Haley. So sorry.
That's fine. I've heard worse.
There you go. So what are we talking about? You teased it a little bit. What are we starting the show off with?
The grand finale, obviously, you want to talk a little bit about how you think it might be a good idea for Major League Baseball to get rid of the All-Star game, but we should save that for a little later because that's going to lead us down a couple tangents. Mm-hmm. Let's just knock out the first segment out of the way. In your opinion, how have the Angels looked very, very early this spring?
Besides the 14-1 game, I think besides that one, yeah. The contact, like you brought up when we talked before, I do like the way that they're going for singles and doubles. They're taking a lot of pitches. And, for the most part, like I said, outside that 14-1 game, the pitching's been pretty effective, like we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked off air about how different it has been this spring. And, I get it. We don't have to preface it every time. This is spring training. What you see today is probably not what you're going to get during opening day. I get it. But I've been liking the fact that seemingly these guys aren't swinging for the fences. They're just going out there and playing baseball. And that's something that we haven't seen. I mean, forget this decade. We haven't seen that since like those 2009 type of teams, when we were on those runs. That was really the last time I consistently remember an Angels team going out there and hitting for average and playing small ball. It seems like ever since then, really once Pujols got signed, something kind of shifted. You know what I mean? Already one of these home run power hitters. And because of that, it set an unfair expectation on what these guys were supposed to be. And, in a world where everyone else is zigging and going for those launch angles, it's okay to have nothing but contact, guys. I'll take that.
Yeah, I think since we started this page together, we've always talked about having we always would roll our eyes, me and you, whenever they were like, hey, let's put Trout in number 2 and stuff like that. We never agreed with Ohtani leading off and stuff like that. We were always under the mindset of maybe it was old school baseball, but it worked. If it wasn't broke, don't fix it. We talked off air also about Juan Pierre and Castillo being together. That was a dynamic duo to set up those great Marlins hitters 3 through 6. The Angels had that at one point. They had Bobby Abreu there hitting right behind Sean Figgins. When you have 2 contact hitters that work the pitchers and put pressure, because if they get on base, they're a threat to steal bases. They're a threat to go from first to third. The pitcher has to focus in on them, and then they kind of can make a mistake, right? And leave one over the middle for a power hitter to crank. So I think that's what's been missing. And you brought it up too. It's been missing for a while now for the Angels. They haven't had that true leadoff guy. We've tried, like last year, there must have been about a dozen or more leadoff attempts by different players.
I think you got a couple at bats there.
Yeah, I sure did. I got more hits than Rendon, but
low bar.
It's not much. Yeah. But again, too, the Angels haven't had, in my opinion, a good number 2 since Howie Kendrick mostly had that number 2 spot for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's really no obvious answer right now for who should lead off. I know a lot of people are going to be yelling at me like, what an idiot. I mean, it's obviously Nolan Shanuel, but I don't know. I would put him there for now because, you know, he has a high on base percentage. He has a good baseball IQ. He's very good at going up there and having a good, consistent at bat.
He sees a lot of pitches regardless. Yeah,
exactly. In my opinion, that's kind of always been a traditional leadoff guy, but also the guy's not a very fast runner. You typically want your leadoff guy to have a little bit of speed. I know there's a lot of other pages out there and podcasts who are like, oh, I think Taylor Ward should lead off.
No,
you know, I don't love that. I like Taylor Ward batting like the highest that guy should ever bat's like 6th, and that's like an emergency situation. I think if you have a situation where Ward's batting 7th or 8th, that's a pretty good thing. You know, he is a great piece if he's a guy, not the guy. So I kind of like him there. Neto, I like in the number 9 spot. I know Ron Washington's already saying he kind of wants him in the number 6, number 7 spot. I don't hate that. But I could see a world where Neto's a good leadoff hitter too. Good contact guy, at least lately. He did strike out a lot when he first came up. But he's worked on that clearly. He's had – when he ended the year before his injury, I definitely saw a lot of potential there. And this guy proved that he's a legitimate major leaguer.
Well, I have a question before we move on.
Sure.
Since you brought up Neto, like we saw him maturate into a guy going for power, you know, like he almost hit 30 home runs last year. And are you leaning more towards having a guy who's potentially going to hit 25 to 30 home runs in your leadoff spot, or do you give him a crack to maybe protect or hit before like a Mike Trout?
I mean, it really depends on who that leadoff guy is. I mean, remember a couple years ago, I believe when Joe Madden was here, Justin Upton was our leadoff guy, and we're like, oh man, dude, this guy's freaking nuts. But then Upton was a great leadoff hitter. You know what I mean?
Worked.
It worked great. So you never really know. Now, a guy that I didn't mention who I can see leading off, Joe Adell. Joe Adell has the ability to pop the ball over the fence. Yeah, he does strike out an awful lot. So maybe that might change his approach a little bit. But the other thing, he's one of the fastest guys on the team. So
now if I could break in one more time. My finger was pointing, so you got to acknowledge that. Okay. No, but real quick, since you brought up Adell, does Adell remind you of Mike Cameron if he had a better like batting average? Because I think Cameron was between 260 and 280 as a hitter, but Seattle let him off a lot.
Yeah, I liked Mike Cameron. I mean, growing up in San Diego, I saw a lot of Mike Cameron, and I loved him in that role. He was a great center fielder. He was just a great overall player. I mean, let me see. He was worth a almost 47 WAR. Through 6,839 at bats, he had a career batting average of 249. That is respectable.
Can Adell get to a Mike Cameron level or close to it, in your opinion?
Well, Joe Adell's proven that he has the power, right? Last year, he finally proved that he has the power at the major league level because, you know, we always had that issue where he was a 4A guy, right? You know, we'd send him down to AAA and the guy's hitting 20 home runs a month. He's just mashing up there.
Yep.
But every time he came up here, he just didn't quite make that connection. So last year, he got a legitimate chance at the roster, and he proved that he has the power. But what my fear right now is that you can't compare Mike Cameron and Joe Adell just yet, because the difference is Mike Cameron was an elite defender. For anyone who forgot, the guy won 3 Gold Gloves.
It's true.
So and I understand Joe Adell got nominated, but I didn't say Mike Cameron got nominated 3 times. I said he won 3 Gold Gloves.
And isn't it true that Cameron took over for Griffey when he left, right? Didn't he get that spot from Griffey?
Well, let me see. So from Chicago, he went to Cincinnati, then he went to Seattle, then he went to the Mets, then he went to the Padres, and then he had a couple of other stints afterward. Uh, yeah, I mean, he started in 2000 with Seattle, and he was there through 2003.
Yeah, because I think Griffey was already gone at that point. I think he went to Cincinnati.
Yeah, and he was a very, very serviceable center fielder. Like I
Yeah.
said, you don't win 3 Gold Gloves on accident. One
Nope.
Gold Glove on accident, okay, maybe, but yeah, you don't win three. The guy was a force out there, and I mean, for anybody who remembers, he had that collision out in the outfield. Remember, it was the head on collision with him and the right fielder on the Mets at the time, and the guy just bounced back, and he ended up winning another Gold Glove, lose with the Padres. So that shows you what kind of a defender he is. I'm hoping that a guy like Joe Adell can get to that level. We'll just see if he has an opportunity to do that here. We've said it so many times. The guy's a freak of nature athlete. I mean, we've seen him freaking jump through a lion's mouth over 16 mats that are on fire. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
He's always doing so much. And no one's ever questioned his athletic ability. It's doing the little things. He had that error in center field the first spring training game. But, you can only give him so hard of a time about that. It was the first spring training game. You and I said that on the phone. And you said, like, if it's the last week of spring training and he's making those mistakes, okay, red flag. First game of spring training, I get it. You know what I mean? That's the point of spring training. Work those kinks out. But I really hope that Joe Adell could get to a Mike Cameron type level. Do you think he's got that in him?
Well, since you brought up that comparison, I think he's got the height. I think is about as tall as Cameron. He's got that real lengthy swing as well, like Cameron. But Cameron did strike out, but he mostly got fooled on high stuff. You couldn't mess with him down low.
Like Mike Trout.
Yeah, like and he would also go fishing for pitches. I remember Cameron would go the other way too. Just I think he can be that player, but he's got to do what you said, which is make contact. Because, like you said, he gets on base. He's as fast as a Mike Cameron. Maybe not as smart on the bases as Cameron, but he is definitely a threat. So I like both your choices at potential leadoff. If you had to go lefty and go Shonawell, I'm good with that. Like, I'm not crazy about the speed like you. And if somehow, some way Adell can get a little more contact, I wouldn't have a problem with him starting at leadoff against left-handed pitching.
Yeah, and at the least, when he does go up there, he knows he's going to have to be a little bit more patient, right? So,
Correct.
yeah, and that's the thing. We don't have a ton of speed with a little bit of power and who's contact right now in this organization. That just doesn't exist. You have many guys that fill part of that, or maybe 2 out of the 3. But, perhaps Joe Adell rises to the occasion if you give him that opportunity. But, of course, he's got to win the job at a spring, and he's competing right now with Mickey Moniak, who's another potential guy who I can see leading off whenever he gets starts. Now, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we know the main guys who are competing for spots, Kingery, Newman, those guys, the obvious ones, even Tim Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have some guys who are invites. So Christian Moore and Nelson Rada. What is your very early opinion on both of those guys? And do you think they actually have a chance to make this roster?
I the only way I see Moore getting, even if he balls out in spring training, I think you have to still put up a red flag and say, okay, let's just slow our roll before we give him the nod. I think the only way he would make this roster is if he did ball out and guys like Tim Anderson, Newman, and even Renifo had real bad springs. And then you'd have to be like, man, maybe one of these veterans aren't worth, bringing into the regular season. We had to cut one. Let's go with a kid behind Renifo or something. You'd probably keep Newman unless Newman went belly up, and then Anderson was all right. But I don't see any scenario outside of that where he would make the team. And you brought up Rada too.
Yes.
Oh, Rada, I really like. I think we talked off air about how he's still young. Defensively, I think he's mature enough to play. If you had to have him, if you really wanted him on the club, and somehow you made a decision with Moniak and Adell, he could potentially be that fifth outfielder and just be like an Alex Ochoa from back in the day. come in the 7th and 8th innings onward and just be a defensive replacement or a pinch runner?
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen out of Rada so far. His aggressiveness on the base paths is a breath of fresh air. We haven't seen it's gotten a little bit better over the last
Mhm.
couple of years. I will say one thing last year, once Washington took over, the base running was a little bit more old school, a little more aggressive, which I like. Not as many stolen bases overall as a team as I'd like. But once again, who on this roster had legitimate speed last year? You know what I
True.
mean? There really isn't much. I mean, Neto's got a little bit of speed. Ohapi's got a little bit of speed, but those are your two best hitters last year, arguably. So you're really not going to risk them getting hurt on a year where, if you breathe on someone too hard, they were getting hurt. It's almost not worth it. You know what I mean? So hopefully this year, if there is, I'm going to say the H word, some health in this organization. Yeah, I know. That's the forbidden fruit
We
here.
don't talk about that
If
word.
you're an Angels fan, that word doesn't exist. Perhaps in a world where this roster is fairly healthy, I don't even want to be crazy and be like it's super healthy. As
Mhm.
long as it's just moderately healthy, maybe we'll get to see a little bit more of that base running aggressiveness. And that's just something that's kind of been dead over the last couple of years in baseball. It just, you don't see stolen bases like you used to. And, not to sound like an old man yelling at a cloud, but just baseball's changed.
Well,
But
Well, to feed off your point, I know last year with the rules change, it did have a resurgence. But to talk about to feed off your point too, when it came to the Angels, it seemed like the beginning of the season, the Angels weren't ready to run, or they were running at the wrong times. Because I remember they were leading the league and getting caught stolen, trying to steal bases, and they were pretty bad getting picked off too. So I did see it towards about 3/4 through the season to almost to the end, they were stealing bases more effectively. So you kind of hope
yeah.
that carries over to make your point.
Yeah, and the tough thing with getting picked off, like these guys are major leaguers, it shouldn't happen very often. Once in a blue moon, I get it. You know what I mean? You get caught sleeping, okay. I
Yep.
mean, any of us who have played baseball or softball, sometimes you're just gonna be, falling asleep. They pick you off, or you get caught in a rundown. Okay, I get it. But if it's happening consistently, or if you're consistently getting thrown out stealing, that's when it's kind of like, okay, why does this keep happening? You have to learn at some point. These are the kind of things you do in the minor leagues.
Oh, yeah.
If I go to a minor league game and they're constantly getting thrown out at second base, it's like, okay, well, maybe they're working on base running, or maybe the Angels are looking to call somebody up who's an aggressive base runner. So yeah, of course, everyone's going to steal. They don't want to eat those crappy meals anymore. They want to go to the big leagues and get some flaming young. So yeah, we'll see. We have a little bit of time left this spring to see what comes of those guys. I don't think that Rada's going to make the roster. The guy's only 19, and the guy batted like 238 or something like that in the minors last year.
Yeah, he's got to kill it before he gets up here.
Exactly. But I mean, the fact that he's come up here so far and has been aggressive on the base paths, has played some pretty decent defense, that's good. And that makes me a little excited because I've heard his name, of course, but he really wasn't on my radar before this year about guys who could be pieces to this puzzle long term. And he's kind of slowly changed my opinion on that, where at least right now we're like, okay, I can see this guy maybe next year or the year afterward making a push. And then obviously we know Christian Moore is kind of on one of those teeter-totters. Will he, won't they? Will he make it? Will he not? But I think it's in the organization's best interest to send him down to AA or AAA to start the year. And then, bearing any injuries, you call him up when the rosters expand to the end of the year and you see what he's got.
Yeah, I mean, the only other way you'd bring him up is if injury or something were to happen. But
no health.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, unless he's just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball like Shawna did, I wouldn't count on him before the All-Star break. But that'd be the only way. I mean, if we're because we're going to be peaking on him all year.
Of course,
we'll have the Down on the Farm show with Dominique. So if he's saying, hey man, look at this guy right here, he's batting 450 down there, then it might be in the Angels' best interest to be like, you know what? He's gonna learn nothing else down there. Let's bring him up. So
yeah, and I mean, there's an argument to be made that he'll learn at the major league level because Ron Washington's whole thing has always been player development.
Yep.
So with that being said, you also do kind of have to wonder: is it going to be better for his development to just bring him up and let him work with Ron Washington? Because Washington's not guaranteed after this season, right? This is the last year of his contract.
Pretty much.
I don't really see why the Angels wouldn't rehire him for another year or two if he's still interested. It's like, I mean, what do we have to lose? I mean, as of right now, we're not contending anytime soon.
Well, even if they have a losing record, I mean, I think you would extend him if all areas are pointing upward as far as like even if we got a losing record and if the ERAs are coming down, if guys are learning to play better defensively, if guys are maturing, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say this team wins 75 games. Um, okay, I mean, I guess technically that is a step in the right direction. If you got guys like Logan O'Hoppe, Zach Neto, and Nolan Shanuel banging on the door to make the All-Star team, or at least 2 out of those 3 guys are making it, Soriano's proving to be a major league pitcher, I think you have to consider bringing him back.
Absolutely. I'm there with you 100% because if he's making a positive impression and these guys aren't just talking like they are pretending to like someone like Rendon when they interview him about Rendon.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, we've had players on where they've said nothing but nice things about Ron Washington, and Ron Washington has that love and respect from Atlanta. The players hated to see him go there. He was beloved in Texas. So and in Oakland, he's been
Washington.
Yeah, Washington. So everywhere he's been, the guy is a really good he has a really good feel for, like you said, the young players and their development, and it also is a calming mood. And I think he just had his hands full last year with just everything that was going on. And despite what's happened in the offseason, Angel fans may not be as happy as they could have been if the team would have went out and did more, but I still think that he's going to get the max out of this team as he possibly can.
So before we go to our last closing topic, the real reason people are clicked on this video, I want to ask you, since you and I haven't gotten to talk on air about the Rendon thing, I don't want to dive too far into it because everyone already knows, everything's already been said. But Sam Blum brought something up on his podcast. I just started listening to his podcast. It took this many years. I decided to finally tune in, and it's not that bad. He actually does talk about some pretty good stuff. He brought up the fact that he believes, honestly, that the organization is gaslighting us into believing that, like, Anthony Rendon is this leader. Because they ask these guys, hey, what do you think about Rendon? And everyone says the same thing, right? It's always the cookie cutter response of, oh, he's a good, he's funny, or he's a good mentor. But, I mean, is the organization just gaslighting us when it comes to
Absolutely. It's almost like what's more believable is Gooby Tuesdays. Like you can get more.
Hey, what's your favorite cheeseburger? Oh, wait, there's only one. It's just a cheeseburger.
Hey, I got two words for you. What a burger. Oh, wait, that's 3. I mean, like, for me, it's you get more context about what old 60s and 70s hard rock band he likes than the obvious fluff piece they did last year. We talked about when they showed Shanuel basically shoving a camera in the dude's face, and in Zach Neto saying, hey, what you like about Rendon? And they're not going to come out there and say he's the biggest dick, but you got to admit at some point in that locker room, these guys aren't stupid. Even if they're hot off the press, word gets around, veterans talk, they could put on a face for the media. Yes. And obviously they do. They're being paid by the team. They don't want to get cut. They don't want to start issues. I mean, but damn well, years from now, if we ask one of these players on air on one of our shows, if we're still doing it, hey, what did you ever think? You were a teammate with Rendon for 2 years. They'll have the balls to say it then when they're out of the whole company man type, genre, when they're a normie like us. And that they're right now, they're probably happy he's not in there. They probably behind the scenes told Ron, hey, we don't even want to see his name on a goddamn locker. The guy hasn't earned it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man, because it's just like I was saying, for anybody who didn't listen to the episode I did with Bourbon and Baseball, there's just got to be thank you. There has to just be a level of resentment that sets in. I mean, you're here working your butt off every single day. You're working out 12 months out of the year. And then there's this guy who literally waits until, the first day of spring training. Man, normal players haven't even, it's just pitchers and catchers at this point. And it's like, oh, I'm out for the year. You know what I mean? And it's just, how often do we all ever agree with Artie Moreno? You know what I mean? Artie Moreno's frustrated with this guy, and I mean, none of us ever want to agree with him. But for once, I actually agree with Artie Moreno.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where, we thought he had insurance on him. He didn't.
Yeah.
Rendon reminds me of the kid that, you're all ready to go. You get on the school bus. You're going to make a, all day trip on a field trip. You're all excited. And then he's like, teacher, I got to take a piss. But he never comes back. He screws up your trip. And I think that's what Rendon did.
The guy just dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
In a potty break.
Yeah, he went. He's literally gone AWOL on the Angels and that contract.
Yeah, 100%. Highway robbery is what that contract's been. Okay, so you had told me, you called me to ask me if I watched the NHL's Four Nations tournament.
Correct.
And you asked me, do you see a world where Major League Baseball gets rid of the All-Star game, even if it's only every so often, and they do a similar tournament? And you also said I could see the NBA doing this, in the future as well. The NHL did it, had great success. The viewership was crazy. People were into it. The players were into it.
Mm-hmm.
So in your opinion, why should they take away the MLB All-Star game and do a similar tournament?
I think you brought up football and basketball when we talked. I think, you could do the world versus, the United States, but it doesn't really have that kind of zing. NFL, the same thing. You don't have enough countries playing it. Hockey worked. And I think if it wasn't for the war in Ukraine, because Russia's been banned from all the other sports, Russia would have participated, which is a huge rival. And you could have had Serbia and another country, it could have been 6 nations. And I think, So hockey did like a 9.7, and I think the Stanley Cup from a couple years ago did a 9.3. So it outdid the Stanley Cup final. And I think for baseball, you've seen the WBC ratings, and I would think it would be one of these things where maybe you push the season back a week, or like take a week or so off of spring training, start the Major League Baseball a little earlier, and end it a week later or something. You could work something out. But anyway, my point would be taking 2 weeks off, getting the best of the best from each country. You're not going to bitch and moan about these guys getting hurt for spring training because they're already in baseball mode. They're already fully tested, and you could have them play for national.
And they're like in peak shape.
Exactly. And you could play in national pride. And like you brought up too, when they play those WBC games, they have to play in warm weather cities because by that time, it's still winter. It's still snowfall. Detroit's frozen over. But in this case, in the middle of the season around July, you could pretty much put, Team USA versus Team Mexico in Detroit. You can have these great baseball fields like Yankee Stadium, which couldn't do it, to do it in July. So, or even Fenway, and so you can have national pride on the line, let them still get that beautiful trophy that the WBC has. And I think it would just bring a lot more people together because let's just face it, some people like the whole all-star team wins. They get the home field advantage. People like the purification of it before where it was just a game and you strut out all the old timers and they announce all the players. It was more of like the drama of it, like the presentation.
It was the show.
Yeah, it was literally the show. And then when they got rid of the home field advantage and brought back the old version, the old heads, some of them liked it, but a lot of us got used to something being on the line. And now that it's just a regular all-star game, people are kind of snoozing on it. So I'm just putting it out there that if it were up to me, if I'm Rob Manfred, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Instead of having 16 teams in the World Baseball Classic, let's make it the best of the best. They do their qualifiers in spring that year or whatever, or off-season, winter ball, and you get the top 8 and you have them play this quick tournament in that 2-week span. And I think it would be fabulous, dude. I just really do.
Yeah, or the solution is you keep doing the World Baseball Classic as it has been, and then you do this Four Nations tournament situation maybe every other year or every couple years, or if you do the World Baseball Classic every 4 years, maybe that second year you do it. And what you could do is you can take the top 4 teams from the previous one,
Yeah.
Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic,
Japan and America.
Yeah, Japan and America. I think last year Mexico was a Final Four because they almost beat Japan.
Yeah, they were really good.
Yeah. So you take the 4 the 4 top teams from the World Baseball Classic, and then maybe you can do that tournament. It's a great idea. One of the advantages that baseball has, there's a lot of people who snooze on it in the States, right? Oh, it's
Mhm.
boring. It's America's favorite pastime. That was a long time ago. We don't care about baseball anymore. Well, baseball around the world is still one of the most popular games. I would say second to soccer around the world, it's probably, arguably number 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that because it is being played in more nations and more countries than it's ever has. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Yeah,
and
I mean,
I will
there's a lot
say,
of countries where it's a big deal. I mean, Japan is obsessed with baseball.
oh
A
yeah,
lot of these Latin American countries are obsessed with baseball. So,
Australia from our friends down under, and our friends over here too, like Marty, baseball's taken off in Australia. and
yeah,
and they're getting better every time they play the World Baseball Classic too. So, and for baseball ratings in general, I mean, it slipped to number 3 and was teetering around hockey ratings. Now the ratings have gone up to where they're above basketball, they're above hockey. They're nowhere close to the NFL. Nobody is, but the fact of the matter is, baseball's trending up, and maybe this is a shot in the arm that baseball needs.
yeah. I don't think it's a bad idea if they do it the right way. Um, I also don't understand why people sleep on the World Baseball Classic. There's so many people who are like, "Oh, it's just an exhibition game; it doesn't count." If you've ever actually sat down and watched the World Baseball Classic, you should get an idea of how big of a deal this is around the world. Like I said, if you watched any of those games that took place in Japan, people were going mental. You
Oh yeah,
know, same really in all the Asian countries. I mean, what was it in South Korea?
yeah.
They were going crazy there too. I mean, that's a giant rivalry between Japan and South Korea.
Yeah, if you see the national pride, I don't know if you've been to one. I went to one. Steve Lease has been to a couple. The atmosphere is different. I mean, they've got like the noisemakers from soccer. They got the
Yeah, the
rattlers from
vuvuzelas. Yeah.
yeah, they got the rattlers from Japan. It's just there's so much festiveness to its national pride. It's nice to see fans just getting into it, and the players too. I mean, it's not like regular season games. I mean, these guys are jumping out of the freaking dugout and they're celebrating, doing dances. I mean, Nicaragua just qualified today versus Chinese Taipei. Great Britain, it was a huge story, even though they lost every game they played in last time. The fact that their jerseys weren't, they were falling apart. They look
Yeah.
like, something
It looked
that
like
you
you or I made it. We're not the graphic designers on the page.
yeah, yeah, and so what that did was Great Britain is really trying to qualify this time, and they want to put in a better show. And trust me, their jerseys are going to look legit this time. So there is that pride. I mean, it was a huge story. So uh, I'm looking forward to this year's tournament, and obviously we won't see any changes soon, but maybe Rob gets the email because the collective bargaining agreement is winding up after next year, and you gotta strike while the iron's hot. And I think he's going to see really good ratings from next year's World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, and the MLB is starting to become a little more global now.
Correct.
It is the top league in the world in terms of baseball. So, with that being said, I think this is a good time if they want to try something like that. I mean, obviously because of what that nasty blue team up to 5 has done with their roster, they have eyes all over Asia on their product, right? And that's not
Hmm.
necessarily a bad thing. I get it. For business, it's great. There is Latin American players that have seemingly taken over baseball over the last, 15, 20 years. And that gets a lot of eyes from, Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, just to name a couple. So with that being said, if you were to ever try something like this, I think this is the time. I think it's a great idea. It could take something as boring to the casual viewer as the All-Star game into something that is a much watch, game. Um, but the other thing is, like, I feel like here in the States, we just don't understand what the excitement of baseball could be. 'Cause there's a lot of people who just casually watch it. But like you said, when you go to a World Baseball Classic, people have these noisemakers. People are invested in it.
Hmm.
And I feel like the mindset kind of has to change here because I'm sure you remember before the last World Baseball Classic, there were so many people who were just like, hey, why are people are getting hurt? You had Edwin Diaz from the Mets, going out for the whole year because he was celebrating after closing a game out. And then you get all those people like, oh, see, look what
Yeah,
happens. That's
yeah.
what happens. And perhaps doing this tournament in the middle of the year would kind of change that for obvious reasons. Like you say, in the middle of the year, these guys are in tip-top shape.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any kind of like torn muscles or anything else like that. I mean, it would have to be like a freak play. But I would say this too. And what do you think about this, Fernando? Because we didn't talk about this. And this just popped in my head when you were talking about that. You know how they always, every year, there's an all-star snub or two, and people make a big deal because guys like Mike Trout, who didn't play, get voted in. This would change things too, because then players are trying to play to hard all year, not only for their contracts and for their team, but to make their prospective team. What if there's only so many spots on that Puerto Rico team or on that Japanese team or on that American team? You want to ball out so you qualify for that country's team, right?
I mean, you'd like to think so, but I mean, there was a lot of interviews with guys. So, like the Dominican Republic team, Manny Machado was on that team, and they asked him, like, "Hey, what would winning this championship mean to you?" And he had said, like, "Hey, this would be the biggest win of my career." So, there's certain players from some of these countries that they say this is their biggest accomplishment. I mean, there's people who've won World Series rings, and they say that this was a bigger accomplishment. But here in the United States, I mean, you can't get most players to even sniff the World Baseball Classic. There's just been no interest in it. It's crazy. I don't know what Major League Baseball has to do to incentivize those people. I know last time the U.S. was actually able to get some of these top guys, your Mookie Betts is obviously Mike Trout was the face. Because I think once Trout came over, guys like Mookie were like, okay, I'll play.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, they didn't get their top pitchers. I mean, there was barely any great pitchers on the team. Didn't Aaron Luke make the roster?
Yeah, I think
There you go.
I do think, though, from what we heard last year after their failed attempt and they were like only, one run away from winning or tying, I know that the Mike Trout and a lot of other players around the league were like, man, had I known, I would have joined. So you might get that, a sort of a do-over, a makeup for not joining and not helping that roster, because they were good offensively, and defense. They just didn't have the pitching, like you said. So,
yeah, and Japan's pitching staff was incredible.
yeah, I mean, maybe you get guys like Paul Skeens or Corbin Burns and players like that to join the American roster. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting because before Japan won last year, America before it was really exciting. So I think fans are shooting up. But yeah, you're right, man. If they're playing in the middle of the season, they're not playing them in winter, risking injuries. It's just so much better. I think maybe it doesn't have to go 2 weeks. Maybe it's just a week. I don't know. But I think it would only increase the fans' experience, like you said, with a different kind of fans that go up, with a different kind of pride. The fact that, man, you're going to have these games played at random stadiums, so you and your family can just watch. May not All-Star game, but you're catching a World Baseball Classic game with all stars.
Well, there you have it. That's why Todd wants to get rid of the MLB All-Star game. At least it's for a good reason.
Well, after what you said about the All-Stars, and again, I encourage you guys to watch his episode with Bourbon and Baseball, the Pete Rose thing you guys brought up, and the way that the Hall of Fame is, and the way that just sometimes it takes forever for a legitimate player to get in. It sucks. I mean, I didn't think about that whole thing about eras thing. So it's a very good listen. I would check it out. And yeah, I mean, because like that, the All-Star game in anyway. So
yeah, I mean, and the All-Star game might one day just be an era. You know what I mean? Because we have the era for 10 years when it mattered. And, it determined who had home field advantage. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, yeah, I didn't like that. The All-Star game shouldn't count. It's just a game. But those are probably also the people that never watched it. So,
yeah. I mean, it did serve its purpose, I believe. Like, I was one of those when it first came out where I didn't like it. But it grew on me after a while. And then when they took it away, I'm all, where's my home field advantage?
I remember the year that they took it away, they started treating it a lot more casual. Remember, then they started putting microphones on the people and they're talking while they're on the field. And it's just like, what is this?
It just scares me, Fernando, because last thing I'll say about it is I just don't want to see it fall into the hands of what happened to the NFL. It got so bad where the players didn't even try. I mean, if we start to see guys flip their helmets backwards and
Hitting off a tee.
yeah, like oh, we're gonna do the MLB skills challenge. Like, no, we don't want that, dude.
They
Like,
have a minor league baseball skills challenge. Last year was the first year.
oh,
I was there. I got to watch it.
how'd you enjoy it?
It was different. It was very slow pace, so they need to work on that. But I liked the potential of it. I'll say that. You know what would be interesting? What if they did so for the All-Star game, they took the MLB All-Stars, they combined them on a team, and they went against the Savannah Bananas, and they played banana ball. Yeah, now that's a concept. That's a concept.
That is a concept. I like that.
I think the Bananas might get smoked though. Not that they aren't talented. I mean, I've seen some of their games, but I mean their pitchers are throwing 80 miles an hour. I mean, you mean to tell me that Mike Trout's not going to smoke that?
Well, I mean, the way he's been swinging, we don't know. I mean,
that's true.
We'll see how he looks this year. But one last thing too. I mean, how'd you like the futures game? Because that last year was pretty competitive, and the year before too. I kind of dig the futures games.
Yeah, I've always liked the futures games. I've always been a minor league baseball guy because once again, those are guys who are trying to make it. You don't get Anthony Rendon. You get guys who are hungry. In some cases, literally.
Yeah,
it's gotten better since they unionized. The players are getting paid a little better, and I'm sure they'll all tell you that. But that doesn't mean that everything's fixed. But yeah, I like the Rising Star game or whatever, the futures game. That's always one of my favorite things when it comes to All-Star Weekend, and I liked watching it in person this year.
Yeah, you got the treat of that. That's for sure. So before, unless you have anything else, I just want to ask you too. My last question is, would you change anything about the home run derby, or are you still 100% on board with that?
I like the home run derby. I like it a lot more now that there's a clock. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, there's no clocks in baseball. But I think for the home run derby, it's fine. It allows those last second buzzer beaters. And be honest, how many times have we actually seen buzzer beaters over the last couple of years? It adds an element of entertainment to it.
Plus the guys like that I've seen the last couple of times. I mean, they'll be swinging for the fences, and it's not that they don't have that. I think they give them like 1 or 2 timeouts, but for the most part, some guys will take like about 20 to 30 hacks, and they're like already sweating and stuff. So add some drama.
Yeah, no, I like the home run derby. For the moment, I don't think there's too much to have to change. I don't like the new format they made where all 8 people go and the top 4 advance. I used to like how it was where it's, Vlad Jr. versus Pete Alonso. I used to like that formula. But then, I mean, I also understand why they did it. Sometimes you get a situation where both guys get 12, you know what I mean? Or 12 and 13. And it's like, oh, that wasn't that good of a round. So at least here you're taking the 4 top home run hitters and advancing them. So I guess I get that. But I don't know. Maybe it'll take some while for me to get used to that portion. But no, I think the home run derby is a lot of fun.
That's cool. It's cool. Yeah, it's definitely one thing that's for the most part, I think over the years has not disappointed. You always get one dude that just rips 24 in one round or something.
Yeah.
So it's pretty competitive. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
So Fernando, as we get closer to the season and, we're going to be doing a full brand change and having more shows and different things to get more interactive on the season. What are you most excited about moving into the season? Maybe it could be baseball, Angels related or Page related.
I mean, it's always fun to talk baseball. I enjoy having the platform to do this. We never take that for granted. We love the community. We love people reaching out to us and, telling us, hey, we've listened to the show for a long time. Or when we do those tailgates and those community events and we actually get to meet some people or we get to see faces that we see every year. That's awesome. That's my favorite part of the page. I wish I lived closer so I can go out there a lot more. But, I'll go out there for a tailgate, hopefully a couple this year. So, then in terms of the page, that's always what I look forward to. I look forward to the community outreach projects we do. I know we didn't get to do one last year. Hopefully this year that'll change. We'll get to do some stuff for the community. I've always said there's no point in having a platform if you don't do something with it.
Mhm.
You can have the smallest platform. We don't have a big platform, right? Who are we kidding? But I'd much rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. The audience we do have has stuck with us through thick and thin. And there has been a lot of thick crap that we've had to deal with
Oh
as
yeah.
Angels fans the last couple of years. And a lot of those people are still here. And I just love watching baseball, man. I mean, that's always the beauty when baseball season rolls around. You never know what's going to happen. If the Angels have a stroke of luck and they stay healthy, you never know what'll happen. Maybe you'll make the dance. And once you make the dance in baseball, stranger things have happened.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot I'm excited for this year. I'm excited to see if Soler can be a good DH for us. I'm excited to see if Kyle Hendricks has any gas in the tank left. What's Kikuchi going to do? And then you have the young guys, Autogetti, Demers I'd still consider pretty young. There is pieces to watch for this year. Is Neto and Ohapi and Shanuel, are they going to finally take the next step and make the All-Star game? There's a lot of things to watch this year.
There is, and there's my comeback player of the year as well, Jose Suarez. I can't wait to
there you go. You put it on record.
can't wait to see year 3 of the comeback player.
If he has a good year, and in my opinion, and good for him is he has I would say 10 quality starts. And he's got an ERA of less than 4.5. I think that's reasonable. I will buy you a jersey of your choice.
Oh, if you were to do that, I would say get me a Jose Suarez.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll get you a Jose Suarez Seahawks jersey.
Oh, geez. Nobody would get that except you. But
Yeah, that's why it'd be funny.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm telling you, for me, expectations for Suarez are very low. If he's 0-3 with a 4.72 ERA in about maybe 40 innings pitched by the end of the year, I'll take that as a win.
You're like golf club.
Yeah, exactly.
Golf club, man. Good job, Jose. You did it.
Exactly. I love the hairstyle.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you know what? He lost a little bit of weight, so good for him, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to see his dietitian. I need to lose a few pounds. So
Yeah, a lot of us do. I'm right there with you.
I don't think you are, but I'll take that as a compliment, or that you're trying to help me out there. All right, Fernando, you got anything else?
No. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Check out the sponsors. Follow us on all of our social media. Give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to this, and let your friends know.
Absolutely. Let them know where to catch your Angels baseball. So for Todd Fox and
The Lone Star Halo.
see you.